So let us create our student record JQuery mobile formatted one. I was telling about the storyboarding, assuming I am aware of that. Maybe if you are not, keep a piece of paper and have that as a guidelines. So it's a pretty simple design. At this point may not be that, we are not so strict on that, but if a complex project arrives, that will be a very helpful one. Okay, let me create a project. JQM student. Oh, okay, whatever. The very first job starts from copying the essential files. I'm going to copy from my previous project the CSS and JavaScript file. CSS file. In fact, jQuery Mobile extensively uses CSS. Seems to be all design being done by the CSS to give a look and feel of the mobile design. Of course, JavaScript to handle the events. The base JavaScript jQuery file and the jQuery mobile exclusive mobile JavaScript file, which gives you an additional functionality to the existing jQuery and CSS. These three you need to have, and then probably you can close this one. First part to clean up, I'm going to index is going to act as a login page. This is going to be a login page. The very first part, we have to integrate the external files. Script block could be anywhere, but I'm just integrating them on top. But legend says could be at the end to maintain the performance. Anyway, this project is small and lightweight, so we don't need to worry about that. The very first root div tag acts as a page. Starts from a data role. Data is a pseudo tag. Attribute names could be added. So jQuery Mobile seems to have added a data role attribute and using that as a reference to create the mobile ready pages. So the very first DOM immediately after body acts as a page and a container for a page. That's what I was talking. Data role is an attribute to identify the jQuery mobile. Okay, this is going to act as a page. In this example, the particular DOM is going to behave as a page. So that particular guideline is being given by this data role attribute. So jQuery mobile treat that wherever it finds a data role attribute, it is going to treat, okay, if it is a page, yes, page. If it is a panel, okay, it's a panel. Panel mean, you know that it appears only when certain event is performed. And pop-up. There is a data role pop-up also is there. I'm going to introduce now. So the data role is the one actually guiding the jQuery mobile how the DOM is going to behave. In this case, the data role is a page. ID, maybe I'm going to give it a login. So this page is going to be used for a login purpose. And the usual convention being having header and footer. So this time, this particular DOM is going to behave as a header, and we have a habit of defining the, what is that? Position, I hope. Fixed. Stick on the top always. And the footer is also the same. And it's going to be fixed. In between, it's going to be the main or the content area, and it's going to have the UI content class defined. And if you remember, doing a designing through a jQuery, CS is pretty easy because I could easily get a lot of guidelines, bunch of stuff rather than the data role. Data role is a pseudo one, so I can't explicitly find whether the value exists or not. So if you refer the latest jQuery mobile documentation, they are recommending us to use the class to give a CSS selector values so that you can produce the same thing except the data role. If you remember data position fixed, I really have a difficult time to maintain whether it is where it is there. So in this example, I'm trying to limit myself to use the data hyphen, the pseudo attributes. I'm trying to go much on the CSS side so that at least a suggestion appears and we could easily identify its usages. The data role or data pseudo or whatever tags, in fact, something to do with the CSS, it identifies certain behavior of that particular declaration being done in the CSS and adapt to that particular DOM. Fine. This is something the this is where we are going to have action. Okay, starts from form. There is one UI field container. This particular class, remember I'm trying to create a form now. The form is going to be a combination or maybe a label and the input field. So these two are pairs of a typical form environment. If you notice that we have to define label separately and then we define what you call that input field. So if you try to make them and integrate them, and if you want to refer it them as a group, you can define a div which is having a field container class being selected, which is a part of CSS which is there here. So I can group them wherever required. So let me create a label. Type text. This is pretty same convention of HTML. Placeholder. If you're defining ID, of course you would need ID. This is to guide the touch-based devices. The field followed the DOM, which is for which purpose. So like a semantic information. So internally you are guiding, okay, the label is going to be for input field which has been followed. So username, placeholder, everything looks fine. And similarly password. This is another group. This time it's going to be UB, whatever. Okay. Let's see how it looks like. This is what it created. See that the header footer is there, and of course if I go to a mobile form factor, whatever it is, you notice that the username password is properly adjusted. The label automatically went about to that input field, or when I have a sufficient spacing, or maybe it is a tablet format or maybe mid-range devices, it went into the inline. So this is by default, it does the responsive design, and in fact, of course, that's what I was talking about, jQuery mobile internal responsive design, but primarily targeting the mobile devices. mobile or mid-range form factors. So this works perfect, fine. And let's add the login button. In fact, we had one more attribute called data role. We had a data role field contain, and now it is set to be deprecated. It is still working, but the replacement I have already started using. And JQuery mobile documentation states the data role field contained is set to be deprecated. The subsequent version they are going to remove it. So they are somehow guiding us or suggesting us to use CSS part as much as possible rather than data hyphen whatever it is, because it is difficult to maintain and difficult to practice them. But the same equivalent thing will work if you define the data role field content. But it is working in 1.4, which is something the version we have just used in jQuery 1.4.x. 1.5.x onwards, this is set to be deprecated. So I'm not using it. Instead, I'm using the CSS way of doing the same. I really don't see the label, right? Just going to be a function. This is one way to force a anchor link to behave as a button, UI button. Becomes a button. It's a proper way of doing it. So if you help the href or anchor URL and define a class stating that it's going to be a button, you can define in this way. And there are a couple of other suggestions also available. You can see that additional class attributes, you can very well define them. And this looks corner all, because if you notice this one, it's a very flat button, edges are quite sharp. But if you define the corner all, the button may look slightly curvy. If you know really, if you could identify that. So it's very easy to identify what are all the suggestions available if I do it through the CSS. I have a plenty of options to verify and see what are all the additional attribute values or additional selector values I can define over there. Okay, now this particular thing is done, and maybe I need to give a registration option on the top. Also, an anchor link defined in header by default becomes a button. I haven't defined anything class, but if I verify that, it's a button. So header is limited usage, only left navigation, right navigation, and the center heading. It's not for other purpose unless you override the entire design and put an image, logo, or anything else. Okay. Data icon, which we discussed like yesterday. Register. Oh, there is add. No, it's not there. V plus. The list I have already shared. I'll probably put a link, list of icons, whatever available, but I'm just guessing it. That's good. Maybe I really don't want to see the text. More than enough. Okay, so for the very first time, the user has to click plus and see the registration page. Now we have to create a registration page. Remember, for better design, I would appreciate create a design first, then think about the code logic. Let's have all the designs created first, then we'll think about how to connect them with each other, then proceed further. So time to create a registration page. And also, you have a very important task. You have to alert me when the clock hits 12:30. Okay. register HTML. And remember, it's a single page design. We really don't need to have the additional that all blah blah stuff which I added in the header, because everything defined once is more than enough, because that particular DOM is going to be replaced with the dynamically, and it's going to be treated as a page. So I'm going to remove the unnecessary part. Very first page only should be having the required imports or CSS or whatever it is. Same procedure, data role. This is going to behave as a page and ID to identify, because we are going to have more than one page. Time to define the ID. I've already defined for index page as a login, and this is for register, and this is a page, and of course the same header footer. So let me proceed. Pardon? No, it could be. It's a DOM, not only div. Could be a heading anyway, depending on jQuery mobile suggested. Because divs are act as a container, a page requirement to be a container. So div is suitable, but it's not limited. Any DOM can have a data role, provided it supports. Okay. And what they call me, and this requires to be having UI content. I noticed without this one, the page doesn't accept further designs, so that's the reason I'm putting it. Sorry. And of course we are going to give a back button as well. I'm going to navigate using data rel, so I'm not giving destination here, because I'm going to define here data relation. It's going to be defined. And I prefer not to be shown any text, so data data remember, for every data icon position other than data role, in fact including the data role, we can very well get rid of the pseudo tag and define everything through the CSS itself. CSS is an alternate, and to do that, but since it is pretty bunch, huge number, so certain elements are attribute, I'm using the pseudo tags data hyphen whatever it is, so that you can repeat them throughout. But you can very well get rid of them and define everything through the class UI content. UI, if you notice that the class has a bunch of things, UI header, so that will definitely could replace your data role to header. Instead of, we can simply define class UI header. That transition is happening, but seems to be jQuery mobile community recommending us to maintain both the thing depending on your requirement, but eventually it is going to move everything to a CSS based design rather than data role based design. But maybe as the new version is going to come, maybe that decision will be taken. But a data hyphen or the pseudo tag can be very well replaced with a class attribute with the CSS selector information. So For this example, I'm going to maintain a balance. Both the thing I'm going to use. Okay, back and look fine. Yeah. The header and footer having a default guidance, anything places, it is going to put into three different containers. The first one left, second one middle, and third one is a exim, left or right. So if it is an anchor point, it always finds a left and right position, and if it is a H1 or any other paragraph, it always finds in the center position. It's a default behavior. That's what I was talking in the very first beginning. When you define a header or footer, the anchor point by default automatically becomes a button because the data role header has split the container into three: a button or left navigation or right navigation reserved in the both the end, and the center median what is goes for the content. You can override the behavior by replacing a background, but to start with, this is fine for us. And also, if you remember, instead of directly putting a button, I tried to put an anchor URL or maybe href. I'm not using a button. If you notice this one, it's going to behave as a button. For obvious reason, I can define the destination directly. For that purpose only, I use the href. If it is a button, I need to have a JavaScript part on click and then go for it. So for this purpose, I prefer to use href, and this is going to be the destination. If you really want to have a data transition for the transition to happen. So it goes to a registration screen, and now can come back. So the basic design is done. Of course, we'll create a form here so that the registration data can appear. Let us create a form over here. Okay, this is a container where we are going to put the registration. So div what we really do, field contain. For each set, which we have done it already, maybe I can copy them instead of wasting time again. Username, password, maybe the next full name. Okay, this one I think pretty. We'll have on the radio button. Radio button. We have already seen some example. Radio button is a single selection one, so it needs to be grouped in such a way so that only one selection is maintained. So I need to have something to group them. And by default, we have a semantic tag in HTML5. It is called field set. That can be used to group them. So there is one more role, control group. I'm trying to group a set of bunch of input fields having a radio type specified. Because everything is an input field, it's going to look like a radio button. Of course, label I should have. Email. be name should be the group name. Remember, the same name should be maintained. So, like, I'm going to make this gender. Name should be same, then only it will become a group. Otherwise, if you have a different name, it won't be a grouped one. And maybe transgender is also there, so maybe I'll keep other. So, first thing, yes, the grouped DOM needed field contained, that I have done it. And I've used a semantic HTML tag field set to define there is going to be a grouped elements are going to come. The grouped element in this case input having a type set to radio. And how does the jQuery changes the design? Let us see. If you see that, it looks like a grouped one, having the corner edges on the starting and the end tag, and of course the in between seems to be merged with that. So a single selection be maintained. And this design, of course, by jQuery Mobile, you won't be getting this kind of design when you do it in a normal CSS or a normal HTML. But it really made a excellent single choice radio button so that a single choice can be maintained. But the problem here is every input field had its own label. But whereas if you notice this for this group, there is no label. The label has been integrated with the DOM itself or input field itself. So if you really want to have one more or you want to denote something, a label for the entire group, you can define another semantic tag legend. The legend would be useful when you have a group of elements to be put in a label to denote them as a single group. I would have to refresh this way only. You see that? That does the same work of a label, but since this one is going to be a field set one, it has its own label for each radio button, a grouped label needed to denote them and tell what purpose this particular fields are going to be placed. So it's gender. So see the convention. Yes, the DOM going to have a class attribute selection with a UI field container. Yes, it's going to keep certain elements inside, and a field set having a data role control group has been set. The control group is actually creating this curved edges as a group one, and inside you have a list of elements which is going to take the values. So in this case, I have a legend to denote them as a single group or define a label for the entire group, and individual labels to guide the individual input elements having radio type setting. And in this case, very important to keep the name same so that it all becomes in a single group. Otherwise, single choice cannot be maintained. So this is being done. Let's create another one. This time going to be some interest area. I really want to make it as a checkbox. Checkbox, say we'll have to really change them. Let it be other. This time the group is not going to really help. In fact, we really don't need a group at all because individual choice. Checkboxes meant for individual choice, not to be necessary as a group. But I still want to reflect them or make it look like a group because it all comes under interest area. But multiple choice is allowed. So because I have set it to business set as checkbox. Checkbox meant for multiple choice. I think something really went wrong. Is there anything tags or anything overlooking? I think other ID is a duplicate one. This guy need to fire a name. Did the work? Okay, name attribute seems to be mandatory. But of course, it's not going to be grouped in such a way the single choice to be maintained. It's going to be a multiple choice one. So this case is a single choice. I think probably we'll pre-select one. So if we keep the checked attribute defined, you don't need to define any value. If you set the checked, by default, one selection would have been checked. So email has been set to default. See this the scroll bar by default added when the overflow happens, and if you notice that header footer still remains in the same position even though the inner content just having a scroll. That's the reason we put the fixed data position fix to stick into this same position. The rest of the content can still overflow. And time to define what you call submit button. I still define the submit button inside a field container to maintain certain alignments. Otherwise, you really don't need to keep them. I keep an empty label so that if at all I would need to define a label, I may define them. Otherwise, no use at all. I prefer to use a anchor or hrefs as a button. For obvious reason, I can point the destination directly. So submit. Tell it is going to be a button. So this class attribute having a UI button makes the href into a button lookalike. Want to have a corner button, UI btn choice. There are plenty of choice. Left, right also possible. I'm just going to keep corner button. I would recommend you play around with that and see what all the things are taking effect. With the various choices available, you can try them and see how things work. Hash, I had to decide about what is the destination. I really don't know, just placeholder, I kept it. As next subsequent changes, I will modify because I am really not sure what to do. So, because after clicking this button, I need to save it into a local storage and do a lot of things. So I had to decide about it. Until I don't know about my destination, I usually keep it hash instead of empty because I'm going to define something else. Dead link, probably you can assume it. So we have a submit button at the end. So let the user enter all these details and click submit, and when the submit happens, the data is registered or maybe saved in local storage and goes back to the login screen again, having 3 value set here. Okay, next screen, as I think login I wrongly pointed here, instead of I should point this one for a registration. Let me change it. I really don't know where to login point, but maybe I'll decide later. This one is the right place. So register, transition missing. So login, assuming the user enters right username password, what we need to display in the second or third page, we'll complete that. Then probably if our time permits, the fourth page we'll add. Let's quickly add the main page. Say, make it as a main page itself. So this is the main page after login. We quickly do it. Redundant code somehow helps us to get practice. So never mind, instead of copy pasting, try to write as much as possible. And students. So, okay, the placeholder is ready for us. We are going to decide what is the destination. The first one going to be for back. No text. And the third container also I'm going to use for this actually plus. Okay. So three partitions being used in this example. The left navigation is the back and the right one is going to be for adding additional records. Nothing, the center content alone will appear. This one alone will appear. It will by default will be in center. Anchor point alone finds in the left and right mode position. You can define its position. There is which one? This one. Ah. Yeah, it's not necessary to define it because you are telling data icon position no text. That's in fact it's not going to be displayed at all. But if you really want to keep it, you can keep it. For example, sometime you may want to remove them so that it may display. So it's not mandatory at this point because inside define a no text. Okay, it's fine. Let me go back and connect it. I'll directly connect now. Later we'll add the validation and what really went wrong. Data role header fixer page. Oh my guys. A very important point. Container we forgot. It doesn't know whether what I am trying to load. And add, sorry, main page. something, because we have to tell the container, or we have to tell the jQuery mobile this particular thing is going to be, or the entire document is going to be used for a page. Okay. Now we have a back button or data relay to specify, and plus mean will help me to add a new student record, and this is the place where we are going to keep a list view so that whatever values been added going to be displayed. Let me add a if you are refreshing, I would recommend come back to the main page and then do a refresh. Suddenly if you refresh here itself, things will collapse, because the single page design, the DOM manipulation, everything will lose track. So better you come to the main page and refresh, and you will see back works. Now we need to connect the plus, we need to create a form. Let us complete that also. Maybe it hardly will take some 2 or 3 minutes. So let us complete the UI design, then proceed for lunch break. Add, edit, store. I'll see if I can copy them, because the main page has very limited. Okay. This one is not required because there is no further pages. Here, couple of form elements. So class UI field container to define the student record information. ID roll number also. The subject, I'm better make it as a drop down, will be fine instead of we'll do it, maybe afternoon we'll do it. Just I'll keep all the drop down is missing. In fact, we haven't seen that. And placeholder not applicable. It is recommended to keep that into a field container, field set, even though it is one. And bunch of stuff. Okay, slightly bigger form. Once the user logs in, he goes for something went wrong really. I think I've been connected. Didn't track what I did say. It just helps you to group a label and input field. So anything could be grouped. For example, if you notice a label and input has to be grouped so that it denotes as a single DOM. Whenever page change happens, the label may slightly go up and the input field can come below to that. Otherwise, if the container just goes as a middle range form factor, both will appear in inline. If you see the same example, this is a group. If you see the underlined input, so it has been become a group. Each one is a group. So that particular div field contained denotes these two DOMs are a group. And this always helps if you see the mid-range device both has gone into an inline. So this thing is managed by UI field contained. Okay. Okay, where am in main. Find it. Still not taking. Anything we are missing? Fields are data control group, GROUP, sparse, sparse. Footer here. Again and again, I'm probably missing something here. Can anybody detect what really going wrong? Sorry, wrong destination. Main.html. It is actually add edit student. That's a problem. When we rush something, we always tend to get something really wrong. Okay. So roll number, username, password. If he is pass or fail or whatever, so we can click submit. We are going go back and add an entry. So the afternoon session, we are going to integrate JavaScript, IndexedDB, local storage, session storage, everything in order to make that entire app works with that data. That's all we are going to do. So maybe I'll start after your lunch break. Once you get ready, maybe once you are done with the UI, probably I'll start that part. I'll upload this code. Yes, you can go for lunch break.